The next chapter is called Parity. It's quite small, and we did just touch on it in our What Makes a Good Master Key selection, but it definitely deserves its own little chapter because parity is not only a way to define one master key to another, the parity also has a lot to do with the science of how the biddings will be derived based on your parity. The way in which you can alter parity from one chamber to another is a subject worthy of further study. Jerome Andrews, CML, Fundamentals of Master Keying, does a great job. He deeply considers the concept of parity and how parity affects the behavior of the system. I won't switch to the screen view in this video in this chapter. I don't think it's necessary. I'll just read it. Parity is the term used to discuss whether cuts on a key are even or odd, and whether or not the progression possibilities in each chamber follow the same number type as defined in the TMK. What am I trying to say? If your TMK cut has an even cut in a particular chamber, so too will your change keys, and the same for an odd cut in the TMK. If you're going to have an even in a chamber, all your progressives will be even. That's just how it's done. If you are going to create a KBA, you will follow parity. And if you study all of our KBAs in this paper, they follow parity. But following parity is not a rule, it's a technique, as Lloyd Selber said, CML has said. Parity is a technique, and that's why it's worthy of further study. An advanced topic will show you a very advanced locksmithing concept will show you how you can expand an exhausted master key system by playing with parity. There is established rules regarding how that can be done. If you're out of biddings, you're going to need to talk to an expert or develop that skill to find how you can wield the technique of parity to pull more key numbers out of it. So in your mind's eye, in your KBA, you've got a 2 in that chamber, 4, 6, 8, 0. Okay, there is a rule where you can take an even value in that chamber and flip it to odd. You have to do it somewhere else as well, and there's a rule about it that you have to follow. Otherwise, you can have key picking happening where you pull the key out a little bit, and these pins that were out of sync are now kind of in sync with the rest of the keys, and you could have a problem with that. So parity is a technique. It's an advanced technique, but it's one that need to be aware of. The odd and even nature of keys is not random. It is there by design. It is thought of by design, intentionally thought of. It's a technique and not a rule. There are not so sophisticated reasons for not following parity as sophisticated reasons as well. Let's read that again. There are not so sophisticated reasons for not following parity and sophisticated reasons as well. You can not follow parity because it's or it's important. It might be something that you're doing casually, or it might be something that you have to lean on to help your system continue to operate. Playing with parity could be just what I had said in the prior chapter. If you're going to have limited position progression and you got a 2 in the master, you can have 5 as a progressive. There's no rule saying you can't. You want to use a thicker master, so you won't follow parity. You could have a 6, follow parity. Or there might be a reason you are intentionally breaking parity. And that's the point of sophisticated, not sophisticated, not so sophisticated. Being an advanced locksmithing technique, I will leave this discussion by simply stating if you ever notice an even cut in one chamber in a change key, most likely all the cuts in the system in that chamber will be even. And if it's not, you have a particular level or expertise occurring in that system, or it's a shoebox system. So beware. So back to our Dayton method, where we showed how in just using whatever it was, 5 blanks, and in 5 minutes, whatever it was, I had a working key or a master key for a lock that I only had the change key. That was based on parity. I'm not if 470529 in the first chamber, 4 is the TMK, and then the progressive 6802, I'm not guessing any odd numbers there. It's not the way a system would be put together because it would be following parity. So if you discover that you have a key that doesn't follow parity, what I'm saying here is there's either something deeper happening. It could be expanding an exhausted system with manipulating parity, or it could be a limited limited position progression done intentionally, or you have a shoebox system. So you've got to be mindful of all that. If you recall our discussion on the Dayton method, the approach one takes when exercising this technique is based on parity, and if your cylinders don't follow parity, you will use up a lot more blanks attempting to decode the TMK, that's for sure. I didn't have to worry about the cuts out of parity. But if I had to, and if you are thinking that there's a situation where, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. If you believe that there's a situation where you'll have people guessing cuts, you might want to consider playing with parity, or putting in a system with restricted blanks. So that is the entire parity chapter. Nothing else to talk about that. The next up is construction keying. I have it here only because you are in distribution of commercial doors, frames, and hardware. Construction keying is going to be a part of what you do. I would not say that I'm an expert in it. I have pinned construction material, lost ball I've pinned. I have done, the breakout blades, obviously construction cores where you're swapping cores, whether it be best green or black by Schlage, whatever the colors are, just mean the different biddings. I think every factory has a core swap construction key core program. Lost ball can be a hassle. I had one customer back in the early 90s, and they were building residential, and they were building, hundreds of houses in the western part of the Chicago suburbs. And someone would stick that master in there and trip the cylinder. They'd have to come back in. I'd have to take the cylinder out, take the balls out of where they got trapped, put them back in the cylinder, and say, don't do that again. Next week, they're coming back. Oh, we did it again. Stop. Don't do that anymore. I'm going to take the key away from you. Anyway, let's move on to construction keying.